Well, Mark Meirowitz is a political analyst and professor of constitutional law and American policy at the State University of New York Maritime College. He joins us live now. Thank you very much, Mark, for your time. Well, what do you make of this historic moment? Guilty on all 34 counts he faced in this hush money trial.
I'm also a lawyer, by the way, and so I think I can add a little bit more than some of the things that I've heard so far. So first of all, July 11th for the sentencing. That's pretty extraordinary. In a case of this moment, to have basically about 40, how many days, just a few days to do it, is quite extraordinary. Also, I'm assuming, I'm fairly sure that Trump's lawyers are going to appeal and ask for a stay of the judgment and stay of the sentencing pending the appeal, no question. And then, of course, the appellate courts, it's going to go to correct before it's the Court of Appeals of New York, that's the highest court. But first, it might go to the appellate division up to the Court of Appeals. And I think that those courts will be taking into consideration that we are getting now, think about this, we're having a presidential debate in June, and the sentencing is going to take place in July. I mean, it's pretty darn extraordinary. By the way, I did want to make a point about the legal system, just as a fact of information. There was a presidential candidate, Eugene V. Debs, who ran for president in 1920 from jail and received 1 million votes while running for president while in jail. That's just something to store away. So all of that's happening here is really quite extraordinary. The first president, former president, convicted in a criminal trial. I would say my immediate reaction, I was quite surprised that the jury, and again, I'm not there, I have no idea what they're doing, but that they were very, very rapid in terms of their deliberation. They asked a number of very thoughtful questions. To have the judge read back these complicated instructions, and we could talk about that if you want as well, because the gravamen, the base of the case is that there are a number of misdemeanors here. And these misdemeanors already have passed what we call the statute of limitations, which means they couldn't be brought on their own. In order to bring them and update them to a felony, you needed to connect them to another offense. And the judge's position was, well, you don't have to specifically say what the second offense is. It's New York election law, federal election law. There's a lot of complexity to this. But I think in light of the fact that the jury instructions needed a lot of time to be reread to the jury, and then they needed 30 minutes to fill out the forms. I mean, it's pretty momentous from A to Z. Of course, we could talk about the political system and what that means. It is momentous beyond belief. The whole country has been riveted with this. And in terms of the reaction of Trump's base, clearly each time he has been accused of a crime, as a political analyst, I would say it's clear that his poll numbers have gone up. But some of his cases have actually been delayed and actually been stopped in the sense that the documents case in Florida, the judge has said more time is needed. The Georgia case, there's an issue with the district attorney and the conflict of interest. So here we now in May 2024 with a presidential debate in June with a sentencing being set for July, and probably there's going to be an appeal. So this is going to hang over our legal system. And how does it turn out? Well, depending on what legal analysts you ask, it would seem that there were some things in this case. And this case is really what we call in the law a first impression. We haven't had one like this. And the legal basis of it has been very widely analyzed and criticized on all sides to analyze how this has gone forth. So there's a lot here that needs to be analyzed by the appellate courts. And the appellate court, I don't think, will be unmindful of the moment of significance of this case, especially also because, there are other cases pending against Trump at the same time as he's running for president. Will there come a time when we get close to the election when, the courts might take the view that, they don't want to interfere with the election and have these decisions come out and sentencing a former president to jail when that president is running for office. So to say it's a incredible volcanic case is really an understatement. But I do think there's an awful lot here. I think right now the Trump lawyers will probably go immediately for a stay of the sentencing on July 11th and have an appeal. And then the appellate courts will look at this. It will go up and down the appellate courts. That's going to take time to do that. And again, I think the expedited date for the sentencing is, quite amazing. It's such a complicated case. So in any event, that's what my immediate take on it.
Mark, as a lawyer, for 12 jurors to reach a unanimous verdict, just how difficult is that? Because by all accounts, it seemed to happen quite quickly over 2 days.
Well, you see, the thing here is that this is very unusual. This case had 34 counts. As I mentioned, it has a lot to do with, and I'm sure you've covered it extensively on the network, whether or not a hush money was paid in connection with an election to influence an election. That's what it sounds like. But when you dig down a little bit more deeply, what you're dealing with is a number of misdemeanors, which are lower level crimes, right, for which time has passed to bring those actions. Okay, that's number one. Number two is, in order to elevate that to a felony, which is a serious crime, the idea was to be able to link that misdemeanor to an election violation. Now, look, the Federal Election Commission, be very candid, took a pass on this. They didn't accuse Trump of wrongdoing on that. There was a lot of testimony. Michael Cohen testified. I'm sure we'll have a lot of opportunities to re-dissect the case. But the point you raise, I think, is really the key point. This is a very complicated case, and especially because what ends up is that the judge gives instructions to the jury. The juror, again, very important, is the trier of the fact, not the law. The judge tells the jury what the law is. This is the law. This is what you find. But the way this was done and the instructions, that is going to be the basis for, I believe, what Trump's lawyers' appeal is going to be. These instructions were not in accord or not properly instructed. But think about it from the point of view of the jury. 12 New Yorkers sitting there, including 2 lawyers, apparently, and they're hearing these complicated instructions, and they've only been deliberating for 2 days, and in those 2 days, they went to the judge and sent notes 2 or 3 times saying, could you read back the instructions? And incidentally, they don't have the text of the instructions. All they have is the reading of it, and they're really, really complicated. So I think that, to me, a little bit astonishing that, they come to the end of the day and the judge says, okay, and was about to dismiss them. They go, well, we have a verdict and we need 30 minutes to fill out the forms. Well, that's pretty amazing, especially because it's a very complicated case. It doesn't make a difference who the defendant is, but the case is extremely complex in terms of the legal theory of linking the misdemeanor to the other crime, election interference, election law, New York election law, federal election law. That's something that has not been done, let us say, routinely. So again, I'm not there, so I'm doing kind of what we call a Monday morning quarterback. But the point is that that's so complicated. It's quite astonishing that the jury was able to parse through the 34 counts and say, okay, we made the link, we figured it out, we connected the dots, and guilty on all counts. So that I think is the speed of it, and I think that's the point you make. It's a complex case, and they were able to do it so quickly. Literally in 2 days, I think they deliberated 8 hours, 9 hours, 10 hours. I mean, this is very, very complicated. And then they were apparently very thoughtful about it and listened carefully. I wasn't in the room, but of course the news analysts, including your analysts, were interested in commenting on it, and that's what they were doing. But the end result is pretty momentous. And of course, the sentencing being expedited is, again, it's the judge's purview, and respect the judge on that issue, of course. But of course, then in our system, the defendant has the right to appeal. And again, that will create a tremendous amount of law, an analysis of law, and maybe new law on how we link misdemeanors to felonies and how we make these charges. And that is going to be an extraordinary effort on the part of the Appellate Division and Court of Appeals. May go straight to the Court of Appeals. And then they're going to have to make the final decision. And of course, we respect that, whatever the Court of Appeals says. But, you know, they're not, I don't know that everybody around here is living in a vacuum. As I said before, and I have to repeat myself, I mean, you know, we're coming close. We're literally, November 2024 is sitting down the road there, and we have debates and all sorts of deliberations and things going on in connection with this campaign that there's two presidential, and I also had heard that President Biden is going to speak from the White House about it. So it's extraordinary and in some respects unbelievable, but the reality is there, and we have to deal with it.
It's certainly historic. Mark, thank you so much for breaking that down for us. Mark Meirowitz speaking to us live from New York.